Hello, amigos, y hola for all of my amigos, my Spanish speaking amigos. Hola, buenas tardes, and bienvenidos. Um, I want to talk about systems theory because Charlie Bogen had some nice things to say. I've been trying to figure out systems theory. It's a better example of anything I've watched. Seems to be a twist on the idea of taxonomy and categorization, focused on relationships or interactions rather than objects. Well, here's the thing. Alright, so when people talk about systems theory, and by the way, I'm in appear.in/TWP2 if anyone wants to join me or wants to chat in the chat thing or wants to, you can come and talk to me on mic here if you want, It's, well, I mean, let's look at the two words, right? It's a theory about systems, but it's not a theory at all. Systems theory. It's it's an analysis or a taxonomy of potential configurations of systemic interactions that are simple enough for us to understand. So, for example, one system is the grocery store. The grocery store is a system. The grocery store has to make money, so it's got its version of the system, and it has to do with its own rules. And the consumer has to get stuff from the grocery store without, living beyond their means, saving money, yada yada yada. Ideally, they want to get an amount of food that equals the amount they eat, so they don't waste food, so that's a waste of money. And ideally, they get stuff that they know they're going to like and stuff like that. So you've got various criteria, and you've got various hard and fast mechanics, things like decay of food, that yogurt has a buy-by date, best if purchased by date. And so if it's over that date, though, I'll throw it away. I don't care. I just, every single time I throw it away if it's over that date. Even if it's just on the date. Even if it's tomorrow, I'll just throw it away. Especially if it's any kind of dairy or meat or anything. I mean, pretty much anything. I'll just, fuck this is too old. So the thing is, you want to avoid that. So systems theory says, what's going on there? Instead of caring about the actual thing, like it is important to save money or it is important not to waste food. Instead of caring about the actual thing that some people care about, let's care about the way in which vectors, agents, objects, fields, and so forth interact with each other within that system that is delineated as being something kind of specific, like this. It's pretty easy to say what counts as part of the system of going to the supermarket and buying groceries and what doesn't. So, if you were to do as full an analysis of that system as possible, you'd understand the agents who take action you try to understand it from either the consumer perspective or the business perspective. It wouldn't be necessary, I guess the best way to say this, it wouldn't be necessary for you to evaluate it under both perspectives because they're so different from each other. Unless your goal was to do some sort of doctoral thesis on supermarket systems mechanics. So the thing about systems and systems theory, quote unquote, what it should be called is systems lexicon, or it's a nomenclature, a systems nomenclature that allows you to distinguish between elements of a system and note that within very different systems, those elements remain the same, which is itself a form of systems theory. That's to say, it's meta-systems theory. It's saying, I'm analyzing why it is and what we're doing with systems theory. I use that expression because that's what it's called, but it's not, as I said, it's not actually a theory. um, so, let's talk about small world systems for a second. It turns out that chaotic, complex systems that are comprised of independently acting agents, which is to say, life as we know it, that that they tend to, if allowed to naturally, if allowed to, if the ecosystem's rules are predominant, are decisive in the matter, and the ecosystem's rules are not unbalanced by oppressive use of force or something, then in a normal society, you'll have small world systems, which is to say you'll have redundancy in the local nodes, such that if, let's say you've got 12 distinct instances over a geography, that is to say, let's say call them towns, right? There's 12 towns over 100 square miles, or 200 square miles, whatever. And you look at what those towns' links are. They have the most links to the places closest to them, and the fewest links to the places furthest away from them. Not within that set of 12, because that's a local community, so they may have an equivalent amount of linkage to equivalently distanced community members in terms of objects within that local node of the field, which is to say that town and that group of towns. So, like, I live in the greater Los Angeles area. It's made up of a bunch of different little cities and towns and shit like that. I've never actually lived. No, I did live in Los Angeles for a couple of years, but in Eagle Rock. But except for that, I never lived in Los Angeles. I always lived in one of the neighboring little cities. You can understand that those neighboring cities, I might be equally likely to go to Pasadena as I am to Sierra Madre, even though Pasadena is a little further away, because it's got a little bit more stuff in it. Well, a small world systems understanding says in these local nodes, you're going to have more and more solid linkage to things nearby you, as a general rule. You're going to have fewer but bigger, so to speak, or more resource and or space and or attention consuming linkages at far distances, but it'll be singular. You won't have other options. The key element that I still haven't gotten to after all this fucking preface about it is that there's redundancy in the small world systems model, such that if Town A is supposed to provide, if Town A provides for the system outputs X, Y, and Z, and Town B provides for the system outputs W, X, and Y, and Town C will produce W, Y, and Z. And the thing is, there'll be variations, but there'll be a lot of redundancy within that small world systems. There won't be any redundancy for the stuff that's unique to the long linkages, because those linkages are more resource intensive and they require a singularity of course that the local nodes don't require, because of the necessity to plan. In other words, to commit in advance and extended effort in order to attain the linkage, the far linkage. You're committing more resources going in without knowing necessarily what the linkage is going to produce. So you might say it's less efficient. And in fact, that links now back into cognitive functions. When we're talking about cognitive functions, and I keep telling people it's a taxonomy, what I should really say is it's a taxonomy slash nomenclature slash set of definitional levers that allows one to parse out the whole of human cognition such that one can observe a person engaging in certain behaviors in certain ways and deduce a shit ton about them from a few simple observations using these approximations called cognitive functions. They're called cognitive functions because they are elements within a system. Elements of a system are the field, objects on the field, agents, that is, say, objects that move and take independent action on the field. There are functions, which are ways of taking action by an agent. So if I'm playing in a game like Magic the Gathering, when it's my turn, I can untap all my lands, so that I got my mana. I used to play Magic the Gathering. I haven't played it in a long time, but I know how it works. So. Anyway, you untap all your lands, and then you can do various things, and the things that you do in Magic the Gathering, they don't just, for example, kill your monster or cause you damage. They might cause there to be a token placed upon your creature that poisons them or something slowly, and every turn that thing says you have to take 2 or what, It's the same thing with any function. If I go 8 meow 3, the function of the thing that fills in the meow, it executes a process that informs how you understand the consequent and whether it's validated or not. So cognitive functions then are ways in which we cognate that are distinct from one another, and distinct according to this interlacing metric of slopage, ultimately slopage. So, although TI is the most important, it's the most important thing to be good at, it's the most important thing to naturally use as part of your default nature as a tool function or an identity function. Because all language and communication ultimately has to go through TI to some degree or another. In other words, even somebody who doesn't value TI at all can't really get away with saying in one breath, it is never okay for you to look at your phone when we're out on a date together. Johnny, we've been together for 3 years now, and you are not to be looking at your phone. And then Johnny goes, I'm sorry, I know that really bothered you, I shouldn't have looked. I sort of reflexively peeked at it real quick. I didn't even see who it was, I'm sorry. And she goes, hold that thought, Johnny. She's looking at her phone. Oh my goodness, that's interesting. Susie, Johnny, I'm reading something on the internet. You're going to have to hold on for a second. Well, that would be a TI violation. It might be the case that Susie's feelings are authentic and consistent with her behavior in both instances, both not wanting him to do it and feeling fine about herself doing it. But TI is present enough in the world to say more than half the people probably have TIFE, or about half of them. I don't know actually what the numbers are, but I mean, in their conscious stack, which is to say 1, 2, 3, or 4, if you have TI 1 or 2, you're going to have an advantage in terms of systems. In other words, it's a system you can be clearly better at, and it's a system that people can be pressured with. You can say, but you just said this, and then you just said this, so which is it? Why should we do what you're saying? You're making no sense. And if they're unable to come up with adequate warrants, equivalencies, approximations, analogies, whatever they need to do with their TI to reconcile a contradiction, if they're unable to do it, then they will be pressured into backing down. They have been called to account for themselves logically about something like, but you just said this and this, and that doesn't make any sense. And you explain it to me because I need to understand it if you expect us to do what you want. And the person just like, well, they're done. So TI in that regard TI is the most important one to have if you want to move shit in general the way you want to move stuff, and you want to dictate the course of stuff more instead of being reactive all the time. But that's just function shit, right? It's like that's what I was on functions. So those are all functionalities, and it's really slopage, and it's not ultimately TI being the winner, and so therefore your FI is wrong, as a lot of young NTs tend to do. They all invalidate people's feelings and say that because their feelings are illogical, that they have no validity and ought not be considered at all. And the reality is, we are in a universe of slopages on multiple manners of attention occurring concurrently within different people, not occurring concurrently within the same person. So, in other words, I might prioritize TI in certain contexts, and in other contexts, more prioritize FE. If somebody else is giving the TI hammer on somebody, depending on which of those contexts it is and or my mood, I may be like, come to the FE rescue and try to play the 9 and try to play the let's redirect and not get into a big silly argument with this. I might do that sometimes. But so I'm not just evaluating everything on TI. I'm evaluating on TI and FE primarily, but I'm also relating it to my personal things that I've learned personally in life. I'm also relating it to what feels comfortable and good in the moment. Those are SI things. I'm also relating it a little bit to the singular objective truth based on the systems of the world that's NI as my objective epistemology, but mine's ignored, so very little of that. But other people have other ones, right? So the thing is, when you come up against somebody that you're not in agreement with, or that you are in agreement with, it's not because, oh, look, one-to-one correlation here. You passed my TI test, therefore your FI is okay. FI will never pass your TI test. No matter how many times you test it, no matter how many different instances of FI you test, it is definitionally, attentionally, and existentially exclusive from TI. They are the opposite thing. TI is the attempt to address things as though disinterested, as though evaluating it for parties that you have that are unrelated to you for the purpose of being disinterested. So, I mean, it does only, I guess you could say, it justifies itself circularly in some sense, but the thing is, I'm also considering these other things, and so it's really like this web of, well, that works for me on two of my preferred top 3 attentional methodologies. Therefore, I'm going with it. Is without thinking that explicitly or consciously is probably much the way that decision making occurs. Is that compatibility of metrics, and you can express compatibility in ways that highlight why it's going to work, or you can express it in ways that highlight why it's not. But if you're going to successfully persuade others, you have to have more downhill than uphill ultimately, and or the will to overcome the increased uphill, which means to say I might have very easy, smooth sailing rhetorical slope TI. It may be extremely steep uphill rhetorical slope FI. It may be up and down kind of slope FE rhetorically. So what might be absolutely logically true might also be linked very closely to somebody else's powerful, strong individual subjective feelings about something. That means my easy downhill slope is their uphill slope, or they see it as an uphill slope. But then maybe on a TE basis, let's say we're talking about how to do something, maybe we align well and we both agree that that's a good, sensible way to do it. If we were going to do it, the question is, should we do your thing that's logical, or should we trust my feelings? But I agree that would be a good way to do it if we were going to do it your way. That would be agreeing on a TE, right? You can almost craft coalitions between two individuals where you're crafting a coalition of their different values that are implicit because of their habitual attending along specific functions in a specific order. So that's my thoughts on systems theory, functions, objects, agents, fields, and subjectivity a little bit. I didn't go into that. I don't want to go into that too much. But the point is, about the small world systems models, naturally occurring redundancy allows systems to evolve and be adaptable in real time if they are chaotic systems. If they are chaotic systems that produce emergent phenomena that can't be causally reducible because they aren't singular event chains, they're instead confluences of factors, then the safe way to manifest is with small world systems. And the gambler's way to manifest is with what they ultimately call extroverted intuition. That is to say, as an extroverted intuitor, or specifically as an ENTP, probably the exact same thing is true for ENFP. My brain, according to the Dario Nardi's brain scan studies, he's from UCLA. He refers to NE as Christmas tree brain. If you see the brain scans, you can see how it's lit up in various random spots. Because ENTPs, or NE users, ENFPs too, they don't adhere to the advantages of the small world systems model or approach to cognition, which all other leading functions do. So it makes us less efficient fundamentally, structurally, in terms of our brain activity, or where we're lighting up in our brain when we're doing extroverted intuition. It's random all over the place, and it's a high requirement in terms of energy. So ENTPs don't last very long in anything. It's like we'll do an amazing amount of work in 2 hours and then be like, I have to go take a nap now. I've been working for 2 hours. Now, if you have Adderall or something, then it's a different story. But without any chemical assistance, the ENTP has low perseverance, low longevity in terms of sustained effort over time. We have flashes of like, and now I'll move a bunch of mountains for 5 minutes and I'm tired. So, we end up with a lot of things like mountains having been jostled but never actually getting moved and stuff, you know. The reason for that is we have a high energy consuming form of action from a metaphysical perspective, which makes sense because the most animalistic of perceptive interaction axes is the NISE loop, which is how you know when to throw the spear at the pig and stuff, right? It makes sense then the NESI loop, which is all about managing ideation and the word-based approximations of the things that we do and know in life. So, in other words, caring more about and knowing more about how to tell the story of the hunter getting the pig than actually hunting, getting a pig, or knowing what the guy actually felt or anything like that, because it's not really about him and it's not really about the pig. It's about the perceptions of the listeners to the story. Now, that's the key distinction between NE and SE, and it's why NE has a cognitive action function. In other words, a means by which one ontologically generates newness. Do I want to go get some ice cream? Asks Kim with a delightful note. Can I show the camera the note? Who could say no to that? Want to go get some ice cream? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I want to go get some ice cream. I want to get 1 scoop of coffee ice cream.
I don't know if Rite Aid has coffee, but we'll try it. Maybe called Jamocha.
Jamocha.
We'll ask her instead.
Alright, well, anyway, that's my cue. I gotta bail. Systems theory shows you how shit gets mixed up in the mix here. What happened? We got one agent acting upon another, compelling change in the system. A field being, of course, this and then, you know, yada yada yada. You get it. It's all good stuff. It's how we manifest the reality we experience as we live each moment moving forward as a human being. Remember, you're not a human doing. You're a human peeing. Okay? If you don't remember to pee, you'll feel uncomfortable all the day long. And nobody, but nobody, wants that. Thanks for watching Talking with Famous People. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And if you do forget to eat plenty of cheese, simply wash your mouth out 3 times. And that should reset your system.